started.
Hey, Dan.
Hello.
Terrific. All right. Well, I will go get started. So my name is Greg Stiffler, and for those of you who don't know me or we haven't met yet, I am the Director of Career Advancement for the Michigan campus. Earlier, if you've been on here, Debbie Schummer is the coordinator for the Career Advancement and also the internship coordinator. And so this has really come about, we're assuming the reason you're here is that you are excited, interested, want to learn more about the world of competitive organized video gaming. And one of the things I think, as I'm trying to teach myself too, to think that this is something that's new, we know it's not. I mean, it goes back, I think some of the first documented video game tournaments were back in the early 70s. But, in the last couple of years, this has really exploded to the point where, you're talking about 30 million people are subscribing and coming in and viewing games and tournaments every single month. And this industry with more than $1 billion in revenue, getting some feedback there, is really shows a lot of why you guys are here. So some housekeeping things. If everyone can make sure that your microphone is muted, and we do appreciate that you turn on your camera so we can see faces and get some feedback as our speakers are speaking. There is a text box, chat box over on the right-hand side. If you want to hold your questions until the end, we've saved a lot of room at the end to be able to go through those questions, answer them, and then answer anything new that comes up as well. But that'll it should take about the full hour. We had a little more than 20 students registered. 4 students are prospective students, haven't even enrolled at Northwood, but are really trying to seek out if this is going to be the right fit for them. And probably more importantly, is esports the right fit for them as well? So before we get started too much here, I'm not going to go through bios and a whole bunch of things, but I just want to introduce our speakers for tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to Debbie. But Patrick Barth is the Director of Partnerships at Atomic and Mythos. We have Jose Tellis, Director of Content Revenue at, and I know I'm going to mess it up. I was going to say win.gg, but I bet you it's win.gg in Mythos. Jamie Collier is a senior gaming recruiter with MSFT and then Metaverse. And then I don't know, Dan's here, isn't he? I thought I saw, yep. Dan.
Yep,
Dan
I'm here.
Cho is great, senior talent recruiter at Activision. But it was Marcus that I wasn't sure if was online with us. So
he'll be joining us in the next 15.
Good. I was going to say, so Marcus is going to join us a little later. Marcus Beverly is a senior talent management at Turner Sports. So that is the lineup for today. Got a great presentation. I think a lot of good information. And so I will turn it over to Debbie.
Fantastic. All right, so unmute, that helps. Listen, I have the honor here to introduce these individuals. We're going to let them tell you about themselves. So I'm going to start with the first question. I'm going to start with Patrick. And Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about the role you play in the industry today?
Absolutely. So pleasure to connect with you all. Thanks so much, Patrick Barthe. Everyone can hear me okay? I am a sales director at Atomic Infotech, and what we do is I'm based out of the Seattle, Washington area. We operate our headquarters out of Issaquah, Washington. We operate a studio called Georgetown Studio out of Seattle, Washington. I get to work with game developers and different clients that need live broadcast and production services. Could be, I guess I would say kind of our sweet spot is working with a game developer who has an idea or concept for a product that would you guys might see airing on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube. We take everything from kind of like concept, building, run of show, sourcing talent, anything kind of in between to try and satisfy the need of the client. And we go deliver fun projects. But I'm very lucky kind of living out here in the Seattle region. We're kind of the epicenter of the gaming world. If you are familiar with companies like Nintendo, Wizards of the Coast, Valve Corporation, Pokemon Company, Bungie, Microsoft and Amazon, who are Jargonauts. So very, very lucky and happy to tell you a little bit more about that. And then also, I'm very much involved in the amateur gaming scene, working in, I guess I've run projects for not only military, but high school, college, and then kind of pro level. So just a pleasure to be here and happy to talk with y'all and lend you my expertise if I can.
Fantastic. All right, let's just go down the list. And so, Jamie, tell us a little bit about yourself and the role you play in the industry today.
Absolutely. I hate to follow up Patrick because he's so eloquent, so I'll do my best. I've been recruiting at a senior level for about 6 years. I was a developer, UX UI designer before that, but I kind of fell into video game recruiting about 6 years ago. Started with HoloLens and then moved on to Forza. Spent a lot of time, almost 5 years with Halo, building out the Halo Infinite team recently. And then moving on to Metaverse and the world of possibilities and realities. I've worked with companies that do augmented and virtual reality, a lot of startups. Currently, I'm actually working with Uplift Games. They are the producer, the studio behind the #1 game on Roblox called Adopt Me. And I've had the pleasure of working with a number of blockchain and NFT games recently. And so everything from, how do you get your foot in the door at a AAA gaming studio to how do I create in this thing called the metaverse that we're all talking about. So love to answer any questions, happy to be here. I spend a lot of my time supporting the Seattle market, super awesome, as well as now global. And I am in sunny Las Vegas, but my home state is Michigan, so happy to be here.
Oh, fantastic. All right, let's go to Jose.
Thanks, Deborah. And that's a really hard intro to follow up. So again, thank you, Jamie. So as Deborah mentioned, Jose Tellez, I currently work at full-time as a business development manager, partnerships, director of content revenue, a lot of hats that I wear for Win.gg. So Greg, you definitely got that right, Win.gg. And I've been there now for a few years here in the Seattle area, overseeing every aspect from the ground up, whether it be understanding the audience that Win.gg garners. Again, if you haven't got a chance to check out the website, Win.gg is a esports and gaming media outlet. So we cover the scene from the pro scene down, a lot of news stories, a lot of content that stems from the outlet. And my job is really to create a business around the media outlet itself. So whether that means understanding our audience that we garner, the content that we create, understanding how we can help brands get in front of the quote unquote gamer, right? The traditional gaming audience, in order to kind of acquire those users for the brand. Prior to my time in being full-time in esports, which is again started a few years ago, I did have the pleasure of working at Amazon corporate. That's actually when I first met Patrick. It's when I first got a chance to move out to the Seattle area. And it's where I think as much as you can learn from a juggernaut like Amazon, it's where I think I fully developed my chops for business, and where I think I scaled my understanding of the esports and gaming space in a really big way. And so any way that I can help, kind of that generation behind me, happy to, and always available to answer questions.
Fantastic. Okay, Dan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. So my name is Dan. I am a recruiter over at Activision Blizzard. Some of you may have heard of the company. We make Call of Duty, Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, a number of different titles. I've been playing a lot of Candy Crush lately because of our King, division, and I'm up to level 156. I'm sure there's a ton more to go, but really enjoy the casual game space. I recruit currently for the Call of Duty teams, although I've also recruited for Overwatch, Blizzard, and Warcraft. And in a variety of different disciplines, whether it be design, engineering, art and animation. So just happy to be here and part of this outstanding panel.
Fantastic. Okay, did Marcus join us?
He did not yet, but
All right,
but again,
we'll circle back to him.
I'll text. Yeah, I'll text
Perfect.
you or let you know when he comes in.
Perfect. All right. So thank you again so much. So, that was really important to go through the intro here because, this is a new industry and it's new to Northwood. So I really wanted to have you students hear the diversity of talent in this lane. So, all right. So let me keep going then. We've got a few questions. So we want to talk now about this idea of experiential learning. As we know that internships and any form of show me and let me give it a try really helps young individuals develop talent for the market space. So I'd like to I'd like to ask the question about now, how do students connect with employers in this industry today, since it's such a new industry? I mean, how can you guide our students to connect with employers? And so anybody want to take that? Patrick, maybe? Dan? Actually, Dan, why don't we go back to you and let you tell us what's a good way that students can connect with employers in the hiring industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm also looking forward to Patrick and Jamie and Jose's responses as well. But Activision and Blizzard, we have an early careers team. So if you go to LinkedIn and you type in early careers and then put the filter for Activision or Blizzard, the entirety of that early careers team will show up, and I encourage you just to connect with all of them on LinkedIn. That's their job. So I promise they will connect with you. We have fairly standard internships every year on a fairly regular cycle, so you know exactly when those internships and early opportunities come up. Also take a look at the coordinator type roles on Activision and Blizzard. We look for people that are straight out of college. So if you have any type of portfolio or any type of interest in gaming and you see a coordination role, go ahead and go for it. That's what I'd recommend.
Fantastic. All right, Patrick, how about you?
Typically, what we're doing, because it's so technical, I'd say first off, in production, what we're doing is we have production assistants. And hate to say it, these are, but this is kind of the first role that you can do in live production, which is essentially, being a runner, going and getting meals for folks, being available to kind of be a jack of all trades. That's kind of our entry point. But quickly with us, and I think you'll find with many studios, is if you have a desire, first of all, ability to know these game titles and play with multiple game titles, you have kind of like a technical interest, like you like to tinker and you just like to, again, you're the guy that will, or gal that will just jump in and learn something, and you have that technical aptitude, you will move very quickly in our space, be it in camera ops, be it with any of our technical roles, and I'd be happy to get into those things. But essentially, there is no way in live production that you could know everything. Granted, you could come from a school that has a great communications background and you could do everything by the book. But until you come in and understand our workflow and how we work with Microsoft and Amazon and basically have adopted their workflows, you just won't know. So it really comes down, I guess the intangible from there is also attitude. So the fact that you're willing to kind of step in and do anything in my universe is very important, and it moves you up quite quickly. So
I'm just going to jump in and
yeah, Jamie, take it.
Sorry, Jose. I was going to jump in and kind of add a third layer to that because I having worked, and Daniel can attest to this with Activision, sometimes there is that, how do I get into, the biggest question I probably get is, how do I get into a AAA game studio? How do I bridge those gaps? How do I, take those steps? And what I'm seeing right now, especially in the last 2 years, with the rise of some of these metaverse and some of these smaller studios that are taking off really big, my client Uplift Games, there were a couple of kids developing on Roblox 3 years ago that then, scaled. And so the point of entry is changing. And like Patrick said, being familiar with that type of game and that style as well, and being able to, whether it's, kind of speak to your community group within that, is becoming a lot more recognizable as part of a point of entry, right? Obviously, part of it is your enthusiasm, but I'm seeing a lot of these smaller studios that are looking for developers, looking for producers, looking for animators that have the skills and want to jump in and take a risk with maybe a smaller studio that could scale really rapidly in what we're seeing and turn into the next, big stealth thing, or be a stepping stone, perhaps a first career step into that Activision or into that Xbox, etc. So there are multiple ways we're seeing as a point of entry into that career field for sure.
Perfect. And look, I think the one thing I'll add here, just as a unique value point to what everyone else on the panel is saying, which are all fantastic points, is what I found is that I feel as though there isn't any one right way to go about this, right? There's a number of different ways to penetrate the market, to get into the industry. I think what worked best for me was being as resourceful as I possibly could. I think when I had first entered Amazon, I had colleagues that were, or future colleagues that were directly behind me, entering junior, senior year of college, and were filling out application after application, hundreds of times, kind of repeating the same information. And it was always my goal to understand why were they going about it that way, right? When my path was, let me speak to as many Amazonians as I possibly can. Let me better understand the company culture. Let me understand what it really has to offer. The goal wasn't, I want to work for Amazon or I want to work in big tech. It was, I want to do business development. I want to do sales. I know that's where my superpower is. And I'm going to identify the companies that I think fit the mold in the best way possible. So, and then at that point, it's research, it's homework, it's understanding what they're looking for and making sure that my resume matches accordingly on every level, regardless of how deep I need to get, kind of treading those waters. And so for me, being resourceful, just kind of thinking about it that way and not just saying, hey, for example, what I hear often, right, is I'm a gamer and I want to work in esports. I think that's a great starting point. But I think developing a skill set that will allow you to be of unique value to a company in the space is what's really going to kind of take you into that second and third conversation from an employer's perspective.
Fantastic. All right, I want to do a quick housekeeping call for the students who joined us a little bit later. We will have time for Q&A on this team here, so please, in the chat, go ahead and post your questions, and Greg or myself will we'll get that question when we move into that segment, if you will. So, all right, so on that note, let's move a little bit now into these ideas of recommended sites. I know, Jamie, you mentioned you put some resources together. Let's agree that we will load those sites up as we wrap this session up. And let's move quick, if we can, into this new concept of the metaverse. Greg and I had to learn what that was, and every video I watched on YouTube went to one of my favorite movies. What do you think it is?
Tron.
It's Ready Player One.
There it is.
Nice.
Ready Player One. That's the metaverse.
my
So
favorite
on
movie,
that
too.
note, the future of the gaming industry now, that's not quite utopic as they described it, but who would like to take that and start that conversation about where they see the gaming industry going in terms of AI and certainly this metaverse?
I think we have to go to our resident expert here with Jamie.
Yeah, I agree.
Shoot. Well, okay, I'm going to take up the next rest of the hour talking about a little topic. Okay, so to go back 5 or 6 years, talking this word across my path, future is screenless. When I was working for HoloLens R&D, and just the endless possibilities. And this is before the movie came out, and I hadn't read the book yet, but I was working on some cool tech at least 6 years ago. In this, anything is possible in this new reality. So I kind of, in my mind, cemented the idea that the metaverse is the future, digitally, screenless. And what that means for gaming and the way that I have seen it evolve is anyone who can create a flat screen experience or even a VR experience, right, where we have this headset that's, tethered, can create what I imagine is going to be all around us in the next 10 to 20 years, right? I'm not going to put a time frame exactly on that, but I get excited about being able to interact with our entertainment and with the simulation of a game without the constraints that we're currently developing through. So in my mind, and the way that I see it, the metaverse is the space in which we will globally interact with each other, and it's going to continue to evolve. Wearables won't look the same as they do now, same as our iPhone didn't look the same as my Razr 10 years ago, or 15, whatever it was. So it's going to continue to evolve hardware-wise, but the concept of like we're all kind of connected in this ether, really, it blurs the lines between where realities are, which I kind of super geek out about, because that means our imagination, the possibilities are endless. And then as we move these games, and as we move these, let's say interactions, right? Social interactions around gaming, around commerce, around different things, they're all going to kind of intersect. And now the globe is going to go, well, how do we, what is our currency? What are our economics? What are our social structures? What are we wearing in this new digital space? How do we act, right? So that's the place that I've got chills, right? That's the place where we get to create. And especially when it comes to gaming, it makes that element of interaction and entertainment I think, just endless. So that's a little bit about, that wasn't quite how to bridge that gap, but in my mind, the possibilities are endless. And so that's where I get excited about continuing to get as much education as I can about what is this metaverse and who's trying to build in it and what are the components of it. It's a lot. And then how do I, again, give that as a resource to what are some of these cool companies that are sprouting up and creating cool games within this? What do those things look like? Where is that headed? How do I get my foot in the door? So those are the things I geek out about on a small scale. Anyone else? Otherwise, that's my whole TED Talk.
No, I would agree. Just to kind of build on that, the interest in the metaverse from the gaming perspective is that, where else can you go online and play with some random people from Russia or Brazil, and so the kind of the foundation of the metaverse is there, and like Jamie said, the opportunities are truly endless. Like, who knows what the future holds. We're just excited to be a part of that, and what the evolving future looks like. So yeah, and everybody on this call, like everybody that's entering into that that workforce, you guys are going to be shaping that future. So we're super excited to see what you guys come up with.
And I think for me, when I think about this, I think about who are the major players and kind of what do those universes look like, and so I think to myself, in the gaming world and kind of these bigger companies, I see Epic Games and Fortnite. I think that's a world, right? And then I look at, of course, you have we can say Activision. I was gonna say that's Microsoft now, right? So Microsoft and their play. Of course, Meta, I can see multiple plays that they're trying to do with AR and VR. But you look, and then Uplift, which probably is and even Minecraft with Mojang. These are siloed worlds, and unless you are the game parent company and you have a strategy and plan about how they're going to execute in that world, the biggest questions in my mind come down to, just like Jamie said, the economics. How can I be in one, Google's version of the metaverse, but then be able to exchange currency with Microsoft's, and how do I, change, that's the big question to me, is how can you be in two separate worlds and yet somehow communicate and merge within those worlds?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Deborah, just really quick, just 2 seconds. The only thing that I'm really kind of keeping my eye on, just to piggyback what Patrick mentioned, was Epic, but specifically for their Unreal Engine. And again, me being able to get more insights into how that technology works and how immersive the experiences they're creating truly are. I think to like what boundaries they were able to push with experiences like the Travis Scott Fortnite concert, right? And how crazy of an experience that must have been. I don't play Fortnite myself as a gamer, but I believe I downloaded the game strictly for that event, and it was crazy to see. So it was kind of my first experience with something close to what I would imagine a metaverse experience would be like. And I have a lot of question marks, as I think all of us do, as we get closer to that space. But as Dan mentioned, the group that's in this call, the next generation of talent, this is going to be something that they dive into, and I'm really excited to see how it all pans out.
Fantastic. I had, when I was watching some of the material today about the metaverse, I had caught that Facebook is going to rename itself to Meta. Did you guys hear that? Yeah. Okay, so it's just real, but it speaks to this generation, and I appreciate Jose, bringing the fact that this is for these young individuals, because the first characteristic of Gen Z is they're highly phygital. That's the first merging of the physical and the digital space. So it really does fit this talent. So okay, so those are really just kind of the questions that we thought would be good to get the first half of this session off and running. So now I'd like to really just turn it over to Greg and open the floor up for the kids that are online. I'm sorry, the kids, students. Greg always says, they are our students, or they are our kids rather. But so it's going to be open mic now at this point. And Greg, take it over.
Sorry, I was muted there. We don't have anything that was put in the chat box earlier. So as our speakers were talking, were there things that popped in your brain and said, hey, I really want to follow up on that, or just to dive a little deeper and maybe into what they do, what they look for when they're recruiting and trying to hire and fill spaces on their own, things that, I don't know, what kinds of questions do you guys have?
I'll jump in and just say, from a recruiting perspective, I've been doing this for a number of years. I've hired at the senior level all the way to straight out of college. And something I'm curious about is, what does Gen Z want? I feel like we're creating like this legacy platform that Gen Z is going to come in and be like, all right, guys, we're done with this nonsense, right? And throw it all out the window. But in the meantime, how could we, right, who are in the workforce currently, set that up for Gen Z? Something I'm studying as a recruiter is, how do we make that interview process less daunting? How do we make it more accessible so you know where to go? There's easy to follow instructions. It's not overbearing. I would love to know, and it doesn't have to be on this call, but feel free to follow up with me. What are some of those questions that the Gen Z workforce has? Like, hey, how can we create? How can we give them a platform to voice their ideas and share with us who've been in the industry for a while and may not see it, right? We're used to doing things maybe a certain way, or, we're used to it always being done. So we'd love some fresh feedback, at least I would, on what would you like to see from us as people who have insight? How can we be more accessible? How can we provide more? And what would you like to see? Because I know that they're going to come in with fresh ideas and totally change the whole thing, which is great. How can we build a better foundation and be there to serve? And what would you like from us? For sure.
Any of the students? What is it that you're looking for? Well, typically, it's that you want to make a contribution. That's a big part of it, that you want to do more than just simply punch a clock and simply be in a job that you're not actually making some kind of a contribution. But what other things are you looking for?
I see some of the questions here popping up in chat.
Yep. So some of the other questions were, one of the questions talked about, they were curious about the degrees that each of you have, and how relatable are they to what you actually do in your everyday life now? So I'm guessing I know some of the answers just from the slides, but.
Can I go first really quick? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So first off, my degree is not relevant at all to my occupation. And I'm guessing that might be a little bit of a theme here. But I personally, I'm kind of a history buff. So that's what I chose to get my degree in. I thought at one point in my career that I would be teaching or, coaching soccer specifically. I was a college soccer athlete, throughout my time. And I think, in a lot of ways, history gave me the opportunity to kind of frame things differently mentally, and see, my own career or certain scenarios within my career differently. But it was really just a passion of mine. I think at the end of the day, I had sales experience while I was in college. And that sales experience allowed me to kind of get my foot in the door with Amazon. As Dan mentioned, Activision has an early careers program. Amazon something similar with the university recruitment program. And that was kind of the experience I needed to have. Not to say that Amazon doesn't care about the degree per se, but it was more important that it was more important to have the formal education. It was more important for Amazon to see that there's someone out there who's hungry and ready even to pivot away from something they're passionate about, to focus more on building experience and get their foot in the door at a big tech company like that. So that's just my personal track there. It wasn't too relevant, but it doesn't mean I didn't have all kinds of fun going after it.
I think I'll go next. I had a humanities degree from Loyola Marymount University. But I'm more like you, which what I understand Northwood to be is really you guys are more entrepreneurial focused. And what I've always wanted to do, my father was an entrepreneur, and I'd always believed that I was going to do something similar and take my own path. And so there's a lot of that you can do. And I think now that in gaming and esports, and frankly, I guess I've been in it for about 8 years, and that's almost seen as like ancient for the space a little bit. But nonetheless, I think the flip side of that is also to tell everyone here that it doesn't matter. You could be a finance major and you will have a place in the gaming and esports industry. So it doesn't matter. It's just like saying, I want to go work for Google. Well, that's great, but Google has people in finance, they have people in marketing, they have people in, everything, right? So it doesn't matter really what your degree is. Now, it's not to say that that certain degrees won't help you maybe get a better first step, but don't be put off by whatever you choose as your first path.
I'm laughing so hard over here because I have a degree in communications, emphasis on theater, which is always kind of funny because I'm like, hey, I'm doing something with my degree. However, when I fell into recruiting in video games 6 years ago, I was actually a self-taught front-end developer interviewing with Microsoft. And I guess I talked too much because my recruiter said, do you want to be a recruiter instead of, I'm like, sure, writing code isn't as much fun anymore. But all that to say, I did a number of things. I had a background in kind of people operations, office management, worked for a nail polish startup. And I loved the curiosity to, kind of build on what Patrick said. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, that naturally curious, natural learner. And so regardless of how you kind of, maneuver your steps, I always think of it like as a stepping stone or stair steps. How you get there isn't maybe as important as your drive for learning and being able to just kind of jump in, roll up your sleeves and say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to learn and grow. And in my time recruiting, that's especially for Microsoft and Xbox, that was the number one quality that they kept reiterating was, does this person have that drive to go above and beyond and learn and take initiative and, be scrappy and get that yes when I'm hearing no's and be able to keep their cool. So some of those are soft skills, right? But a lot of those translate into a fast-paced, video game studio environment or an esports environment where you're constantly go, go, go. So it is funny that we all have kind of different pathways into what we're doing. But I think at the core where we all come together is just that entrepreneurial mindset of what's new and how can I, because it's always changing. There's so many changes in the video game and esports industry, highs, lows, ship a game, get laid off. There's different things that you might encounter. So if you have that mindset of I'm going to keep going, that'll serve you really well and have fun with it for sure.
Great. And I think a good tie-in question, Tyler had asked that he doesn't have a major in esports and just wanted to find out how he can make himself stand out when you guys are looking at his resume and going through the recruitment process. And I think Dan had said that he wanted to take that question as well. So maybe we'll let Dan kind of answer that.
Yeah. So just kind of building on what everybody else said, you don't have to. So the exception being, if you want to be a game developer, you probably have to have a computer science degree. That is something that a lot of our hiring managers look for. But even then, we've had English majors that decided to pivot and go into game development. And so ultimately, it's what we look for is, if you think about, think about Jamie's and my universe and Jose's and Patrick's. We look at a ton of resumes. How do you make yourself stand out from the crowd? Right. We look for things like What have you done outside of school? What groups have you joined? Are you part of meetups? Do you volunteer to, help out other students and other, younger kids? And so the community service aspect of it is huge. Like we look for people that are not only going to add, just from a skills perspective, but we want good people that can represent our brand as well. I did want to talk really quickly about somebody asked a question. Let's see here. Oh, COVID. So what's interesting is I feel like COVID, especially with quarantine and everybody working from home, that actually kind of lends itself to furthering the metaverse. Like if you think about it, like
Hmm.
you're stuck at home and you can't go anywhere, you can't go into the office. Like what are you gonna do? You're gonna hop on your console or your PC and then get into um, you know uh, you know connect with your friends that way because you're not gonna go down to the coffee shop to meet with them, right? So it's just kind of interesting how it was an unintended consequence of of COVID that like Nick said, boosted esports.
Guess I'll jump in the COVID one too. Our company, I would have considered us, again, you can look us up at seattleesportsstudio.com to get a sense of it, but I would say our company was a medium fish in a small pond, but again, we were very focused on our game studios. Well, as soon as COVID hit, there was probably about a month there that I was like, oh, I'm in the events industry. I don't know if I'm gonna have a job very long.
Hmm.
But then shortly after that, we found that these game studios doubled down, tripled down on kind of their their marketing efforts. And so not only did we have a lot of work there, but then a lot of the traditional, or I should say more corporate clients, not game focused, found out the way that we built our signal flow diagrams and basically did our remote broadcasts, and everything that we were already doing for our game studios is what the traditional corporate clients were wanting to be able to go do. Secondarily, in terms of COVID protocol, I'll just tell you that we work with all these big brands, and of course we have to be vaccinated and boosted and all those great things, but our clients have to be too. And they have such strict guidelines and policies. Essentially, everyone that's working on site in these productions, you can imagine, in my world, we're in close proximity to each other, except for like being in your space and you can have your mask off, like everyone's masked. Everyone is walking into buildings that are, filling out risk liability waivers and basically saying something goes wrong, like I can't do anything about it. We're in a global pandemic, so at least that's what I would say.
Awesome. And
That might
just to kind of add on that. Oh, sorry about that, Greg.
nope, you're good.
Just to kind of add on that, yeah, I think, well, with me and my role, we were actually, interestingly enough, Win.GG's team was already operating in a remote environment prior to COVID. And I think it just goes to show that, like, again, people like to make the argument that, COVID and the pandemic boosted esports and gaming in a really big way and kind of almost cemented its place here in the ecosystem, broadly speaking, of course. But I think it also proved that, with the right team on board and the right personnel on board, a lot can be accomplished. That's what I think, Northwood students probably have going for it the most, is that you're entrepreneurial in spirit, right? You're attending a program strictly for, that spirit, right? So I think there's a lot that will change. Obviously, the landscape of the pandemic, I feel like, is changing every single day. Companies will adjust. But I don't believe it's going to be any major blocker to the industry, right? If anything, it's going to prop it up even more. So it's an exciting time to be in gaming and esports, but equally, it's a very exciting time to be launching a startup, to be an entrepreneur, to be someone who wants to build.
I'm sorry, Greg, one last thing. I guess I'm thinking to myself the obvious answer also. You have it in your own backyard. What I mean by that is, again, gaming and esports at the collegiate level, first of all, we've never seen it excel more than it has in the past, year and a half. With a universe of 2,400 to 3,400 based on, how you want to talk about it, college and universities that are out there today. We're still seeing probably about 250 schools that have the institution recognizing the esports program. And from that perspective, right here in your own backyard, you have the ability to make an impact, and not you don't have to be a varsity player. You could still, I mean, still 60% of all students at Northwood, I'm assuming, just like every other university, they game, casual gaming. But not, you don't have to be the star player on the varsity program. You could also be, filling a role in, broadcast production. You could be script writing. You could be doing so many other things to support the university and its efforts. And from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing about Northwood, I mean, you guys are building a really nice program there and have really good content coming out of there. And so you go no further than calling up coach and saying, how can I help? That probably is one of the biggest things that you could do, because it would be a miss. I feel it would be an absolute miss if all of a sudden we know in the industry that Northwood has something special going on there, and then all of a sudden we ask you, oh, you went to Northwood? Great. So what's the esports program like? I didn't do anything with it. I don't know about it. Ooh, there's a miss there. Something didn't connect. So.
Fantastic.
I was going
Greg?
to.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say one of the questions I was going to have is we're talking about internships and COVID and all the changes that came about. Are the internships predominantly still going to be working with a team in person moving to Seattle, or has this allowed for internships to be a virtual experience and they can participate and do it in the new fashion?
I'll answer to what I know. It has changed a lot over the last 2 years. It used to be you had to be, willing to relocate or be on site in either Seattle or Austin or LA or one of the gaming hubs, Santa Monica. What is interesting now, and the question that I'm getting working with smaller gaming studios that are global, two of my clients in the last year have no headquarters, have no office, and have a completely global team. So something to be aware of as well and be mindful of is you may work for a company where you never meet any of your people in person, right? That's the flip side of, like, it's not only two options, but what I'm seeing a lot more is, hey, how do we, and this is a good question for Gen Z and anybody coming up, how do we maintain that culture? How do we provide a collaborative, creative esports gaming culture when all of our teammates are global, which is exciting because it means that we can now put together different diverse teams from across the world. Certain companies have that ability and are expanding. However, the challenges there are, what if you don't have that connection with, go, like Patrick said, working close, there are roles that will still be working close with people, keeping in mind your career field that you choose may, especially as we're, building out the metaverse, you may never, I don't want to say never, but you may not meet a lot of those people. So you may be in an environment that is metaverse minded. So we're seeing a swing as well into that. I'm seeing a lot of, NFT and blockchain gaming companies that are like, none of our team has met each other except maybe the co-founders, right? And we're in London and we're in Toronto and so it is interesting dynamics that we didn't even see 2 years ago when the requirement was you had to be, at studio, right? So it is interesting to think about that mindset shift and where the future of gaming studios could evolve into as well. I think it'll be a hybrid as we need people still on the ground, right, working closely. But there is also, like I said, there's more and more opportunity to come in an internship where you might be just doing tasks completely on your own. And that's where that spirit and that practice of entrepreneurship and self-starter and being able to work on your own is very viable, being able to prove that you can be part of that team and contribute as well. So
oddly enough, I just remembered, so one of the clients we work for is Bungie, and which recently was acquired, and that's another huge metaverse play. But we were doing an internal annual event for Bungie where their CEO, Pete Parsons, was communicating to all of his employees. And they were telling us, because he was in person, and so we were working with him and a few folks, but they were recognizing all these people that had made, their 20 years with Bungie and 15 years and the whole thing. And all of a sudden, the conversation came down to the people that were under 5 years. And there was like 250 people that that had never even stepped foot inside of the offices, and I was like blown away. I mean, that's crazy to think about, but that's there you go. It really happened.
Good. And that's what I was assuming, because this is one industry that, unlike, well, when COVID first happened, it was the banking industry and our students that are in the accounting that really weren't affected because they were already working with clients and doing audits and things that they could do, virtually as it was. So there's some that, some areas that do it. Looking through the things, Jacob, you had a question about intermediary positions, whether they're useful or they filled in by others on the team. What was your idea there?
Should I speak on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea of an intermediary position is that transfer from the tech side of business to the actual side of business, and a lot of times there's miscommunications and lost details, and there's a very important role that sits in the middle where you're able to actually communicate that information. So are those positions even looked into, or are the teams like always competent enough that they can freely speak and be able to communicate that well enough with each other?
I can take that.
Yeah, dig it, Dan.
Okay, so yeah. So so in a traditional like non-gaming IT centric world where you have non-technical and technical people, we have a position called a business analyst who will go in and evaluate the business problem and then go to the engineering team and say, hey, we need to fix this problem, but we need to make it in C# or whatever, and it needs to look like this. And so those are the folks that kind of gather requirements and are the intermediary. In a gaming environment, I would say what I've seen is producers a lot of times fill those roles. They go through and they have kind of a schedule of what needs to be built out. The cool thing about gaming is that everybody kind of understands the business that you're in and kind of the role that you play. But producers are definitely the glue that kind of keeps everybody together and on track. And I think Patrick probably could speak better to that a little bit.
No, I to also support what you're saying. Again, one of the roles I had previously was a program manager for Turn 10, the maker of Forza Motorsport and Horizon. And I would tell you my only 2 cents there is that when you're looking at roles like that, you'd be surprised. Again, producer, program coordinator, program manager. I mean, the naming conventions are really, yeah. Jamie threw some things up there. You have to kind of know the studio that you're talking about and kind of how they interpret these roles. Because to you on the outside, you might see producer 1, producer 2, like you're like, what's the difference in them? They're the same role. Well, in their world, they're very different. And again, just to understand that lay of the land is important.
There's a couple, I'm going to jump in here. There's a couple of, if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's a couple of liaison kind of roles, and you guys touched on the producer, which is also kind of like a project manager or program manager, somebody who kind of manages the lifestyle. They're good with details, but they're also great with communication in that they can talk to the engineering team, they can talk to the design team, they can communicate that to the stakeholders, right? Like they get the studio heads and say, hey, how do we pull this together? They're able to help the team, stay on deadline, meet, deliverables. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So if you're good with like all these organizational pieces and talking to different parts of the business, bringing cohesion, not losing your cool, go cry in the bathroom a few times, it's fine. That's probably a great jumping off point. And there are a number of, so hit me up, I've faced a ton of those. They're a lot of fun. But another role that is actually gaining a lot of traction is what's called a technical artist. And oftentimes this person is maybe somebody who came out of like an art background or an animation background or even a coding background, an engineering background, that then can work with artists and engineers to put assets and to create and enhance assets within the game engine itself, as well as being able to talk to art and engineering teams. So if you've got some artistic flair or some engineering flair and you like to work, that is another role. But there's all these different behind the scenes roles that you might, it's not necessarily maybe a job title that you would go for in school, but it does encompass, the business side and maybe the sales side, maybe some finance, working on budgets, working on, different things like that, that if you're like, how do I pull these pieces together? There are roles that within the studio that just are the glue, right? And can talk to these different teams and help, just keep it all together. So that's a huge vital role. And honestly, those roles pay really well because the people with that skill set, that organization, that drive, are actually really hard to find. And then, just being able to go get it, have that go get it attitude. So happy to help provide more details on those as well.
Thanks. And over in the talk box there, Rocco had a question, wanted to jump in. And what's your question?
First of all, I just want to say thanks for hopping in here. It's been really great to hear all your wide words of wisdom. Specifically, kind of just for Jamie and Dan, hinting at your roles from what I understand. So in general, I mean, outside of the competitive scene, of course, a lot of people really just play games for leisure. Something I've seen, like personally, doing my own research with the metaverse, NFTs, kind of ERCs, and different smart protocols, is different like play to earn structures where people actually earn money and find other benefits outside just of satisfaction when playing different games. I've seen like Zedrun, Axie Infinity, different games kind of like that. You ever see kind of that play to earn model entering like the mainstream, especially as some of these bigger titles head into the metaverse?
You're on mute, Jamie.
I was going to throw it to Dan first and see if he had any tidbits from Activision before I jump in, but I guess
I was gonna defer to you.
Oh, okay. To be honest, I think that is the future of gaming from what I'm seeing. I think, not maybe the only, but I think that as we're moving into this metaverse that we're all trying to create I think the basic like tokenomics, economics of it, the currency of understanding what people want from a game is and how that translates into, currency or what they can then trade for other things. I work a lot with Roblox right now, and understanding the Roblox metaverse for Adopt Me, and actually a game that I'm working on myself, but on the stealth mode. And in that, understanding like, okay, people want to just play, but at the end of the day, like what do they have to show for that? And how do they either get props or they get currency or they get something that keeps them coming back to that game, recognition, status. So I think there's a lot of emphasis moving into what is, aside from just an entertainment and set it down, gamers want more. They want to be, what I'm noticing, and Dan maybe can speak to his experience, but over the last few years, gamers want to be involved in something bigger, not only just a sense of community within that certain game, but like that tends to be their world. So I believe, this is my opinion only, what I'm seeing is we're going to see more and more of that more and more people who are earning within a gaming environment within that metaverse, right? We see a lot of digital plots of land being bought up. We see, like you said, NFTs, people are displaying art. I think as we're going into this space that we're creating, this Web3, there's going to be a lot more incentive to spend more time and do activities within there that then translate into real world tangible, maybe currency or tradable assets. You're going to see a lot more of that in the future. And I think that's cool. I think a lot of people who might not have an opportunity to earn the same way could within these environments. So I see a lot of global benefits for that, for sure, from my perspective.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of Activision. So I can tell you what I see, and I can see on our internal chat channels. It's interesting. We have an intranet, and we, we're all gamers at heart here at Activision Blizzard too, and it's a very polarizing topic in terms of just earn to play. A large percentage of us here at Activision, we don't want to monetize it, like in terms of like, hey, we want to make this game accessible to everybody, and we don't want to have this mode where you can play to win, or pay to win. I think we actually tried that with Diablo and it failed terribly. So it's we want to make this as fair to everybody as possible. But what from Jamie is saying, I definitely see that. If you log in, 100 hours a week in a certain game, you want something to show for it, besides lack of sleep. So there's that aspect of it too. That's a great question, and I don't think there's a clear-cut answer right now.
I'm thinking of it more in terms of like create to earn rather than like just play to earn. So when you think about these people coming in and creating within a universe like Roblox or Axie Infinity or Star Atlas, and they're creating, and that's kind of where, like I said, the tokenomics and the layers come in. It's if you're in there and you're creating within a world and you're playing, but you're creating and you're interacting, I see a huge incentive to be to earn while you're doing that, creating and building a sense of community as well. So different layers for sure.
Perfect. And I think there was just one other question that we touched on, but I don't think we totally answered it. And it was the question whether in this field, do employees tend to have many roles, which I think we've said yes. You have multiple roles. You're not just a stagnant one job title and one duty, but it was tend to have many roles or jump roles often, moving from company to company. Is that a little different or frowned upon or just the norm?
Jose, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, happy to. So look, I can't speak on behalf of everyone's experiences. What I will say is that the earliest days of any space are probably its most volatile, right? Everyone's trying to figure out where they fit in. Where can I best contribute? Where am I going to be passionate about what I'm doing? Understanding that you're probably going to have to work, significantly harder than you would in maybe some more fully fledged industries, right? And as you continue to figure out maybe where you best fit in, it's like trying to develop, a taste for your favorite food when you haven't tried food yet. You have to kind of go out there and try things, and you got to better understand, do I like this? Am I good at it? Can I take it on for quite some time? Can I build my portfolio, my resume around it? There's a lot of questions that you just kind of have to answer for yourself along the way. And as you better understand yourself, because I fully believe that, the young people at the end of the day just are still figuring themselves out. I personally didn't even know I wanted to be in full-time gaming and esports until I was almost 30, right? So, it takes time to really understand where you best fit in the industry. But I guess the good news is that in the earliest days of any industry, there's a lot of that. You're not an outlier. If anything, you're probably one of many. So it really shouldn't be looked at as a negative per se. I think it's just naturally a part of anyone's journey, but more broadly, I should say, right now it just happens to be, from what I see, there is a good amount of movement around it. But I also see it as an opportunity for anyone who's looking to break into this space.
Terrific. Well, we are coming up on 2 minutes left for the planned time for today. So, students, is there any last questions, something you've been mulling over and you just didn't want to share yet or haven't shared?
I sort of have one. I do.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So when we were talking about play to earn, you said that it could be like, you tried it with Diablo and it didn't work out very well, but like, wouldn't that like sort of boost your profits as a company because you're giving them the chance to earn, but there's in-game purchases as well, so it's like you could make it so that the in-game purchases would make them better at the game, so it's like I feel like that those could trade off and not just be detrimental to your company if they're not spending money on your game.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think the statistic from our last earnings call, 61% of our revenue from the quarter came from microtransactions. So people buying skins, weapons, all that stuff. I think the main driver that we're kind of getting at is to pay to earn an unfair advantage over your competitors. That's something that we don't want to promote. Yeah, I think as long as we provide a level playing field, and somebody with like more money than you can't, go out and just like crush you on the playing field. I think that's what we're trying to get at.
Fantastic.
Unmute myself. So, Debbie, how from here on out, we have everyone's names and email addresses that are on this call, and simply going to receive from here, receive all the information, the contact information for the students to be able to know how to contact our panelists. If you definitely, like they said, look them up on LinkedIn and send out that request and tell them how much you appreciated their time today. And we do.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate you being able to talk with us. And like you said, that we are, I really think, at the forefront of this whole wave in terms of educators that have embraced the esports industry and want to make a difference and use that entrepreneurial spirit to make some money and make a difference. So, you have anything to add, Deb?
No, I'm honored by all of your time, your willingness. We did have Dave Marsh online. He is our faculty chair for the program. I saw him taking notes, so he will take a lot of this information into the classroom. We're going to continue building out this relationship. We think that professionals like you can help Dave, help our kids, help us help our kids. And then ultimately, it's the future that these young people are going to own. And so we're going to get out of the way and we're going to let them do it. So you're right. We are a university of economics based on an entrepreneurial spirit. So I think we've got great talent here, and we're really excited about this budging relationship we have with this group of people here. So again, thank you again. We'll send out an email with contact information, and we just appreciate all of your time. Anything else, Greg?
I'm all set. So just
Anybody
thank you.
on the team want something to have anything final words to say?
Just network.
Please
Everyone
hit us
you
up on
meet,
LinkedIn.
connect
I
with.
will talk
Network.
to anybody. Yep, network.
Love it.
Right. All right.
Have
Goodbye,
a lovely
everybody. Good
evening,
night.
and thanks again. Really, we'll
Thank
be
you.
in touch.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie, so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.